I'm 82 years old now, and most mornings I wake up before the sun, not because I want to, but because there isn't much left that needs me. The house is quiet in a way that feels permanent. My wife's side of the bed has been cold for 6 years. My phone doesn't ring much anymore. And sometimes, lying there in the dark, I try to remember what all of it was for. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, earned enough, I would finally feel settled inside myself. Satisfied, safe. I thought success would make me happy. I was wrong. When I was in my 20s, I didn't think of myself as ambitious. I just didn't want to struggle the way my parents had. My father worked until his hands stiffened into claws. My mother counted pennies at the kitchen table. I remember the way she used to sigh over bills. I told myself I would never live like that. I would build something solid, something impressive. I met my wife Anna when I was 26. She had this quiet steadiness about her. She liked simple things, Sunday dinners, long walks, sitting on the porch at night. I like those things too, but I also like the feeling of being needed at the office, of being noticed. When I got my first promotion, I stayed late every night for weeks. Anna would wait up for me at the kitchen table. Sometimes she'd fall asleep there, her head resting on her arm. I'd wake her gently, kiss her forehead, tell her it was all temporary. Just until I get established, I'd say. I meant it. We had our first son when I was 31. I remember holding him in the hospital, feeling this rush of fear and pride. I told myself I had to work even harder now. College funds, a bigger house, security. There's a picture somewhere of him at 3 years old, standing at the front window, waiting for me to come home. I wasn't in that picture. I was at the office finishing a presentation that I can't even remember anymore. It didn't feel like neglect at the time, it felt responsible. In my late 30s, things really took off. Bigger title, bigger salary. We moved into a house that had more rooms than we needed. I told Anna this was what we'd been working toward. She smiled and said she was proud of me. But I started missing things: little league games, school plays, the ordinary Tuesday evenings that don't seem important until they're gone. I always had a reason: a client dinner, a deadline, a flight to catch. I would come home and see the evidence of the life I wasn't fully living. Crayons left on the table, half-finished homework, Anna's tired eyes. She never yelled. That almost made it worse. She'd just say, "They asked about you tonight." And I'd feel a small, sharp sting that I quickly covered with promises. Next time. I'll be there next time. There's always a next time when you're 40. In my 40s, I reached what I used to call the summit. Corner office, people standing when I walked into a room, my name on industry lists. I'd look at myself in the mirror some mornings and think, you did it. You won. But the house had grown quieter. My sons became polite with me, respectful, careful. We didn't fight much, we just didn't talk deeply. I didn't know their favorite bands. I didn't know which subjects they struggled with. I knew their grades, I knew their plans. I remember one night my oldest tried to tell me about a girl he liked. I was answering emails while he spoke. I nodded at the right moments, I think. At some point, he stopped talking. I didn't notice until he said, "It's okay, Dad. I'll figure it out." I told myself I was doing this for them. Anna and I stopped sitting on the porch. I was too tired, or I had calls to take. She began spending more time with friends, volunteering, building a life that didn't depend on my schedule. I thought that was healthy. Independence. In my 50s, the cracks were there, but they were thin and easy to ignore. My sons went to college. The house echoed again, but this time, it wasn't because I was working late. It was because they had grown up. I tried to connect with them then, sent them money, called to ask about internships, practical things, useful things. Conversations felt formal, like meetings. Anna would look at me sometimes with a softness that carried something else beneath it. Not anger, just distance. We had been partners in logistics for so long that I wasn't sure we still knew how to be husband and wife. The turning point came quietly, the way most real things do. I was 64 when Anna got sick. It wasn't dramatic at first, just fatigue, then tests, then more tests. The word cancer, spoken gently by a doctor who had probably said it 1,000 times. I cleared my calendar. For the first time in my life, I didn't care about quarterly numbers. I sat beside her during treatments. I held her hand in waiting rooms. I learned the rhythm of her breathing at night. We talked more in those months than we had in years. One afternoon, she said, "I used to wait for you at the window." I felt that sentence land somewhere deep in my chest. "I know," I said. "It sounded small." She smiled. "I was always so proud of you. I missed you." There it was. No accusation, no raised voice, just the truth. She died the following spring. I was 65, retired 2 months later, as if that gesture meant something. The first week after the funeral, I walked through every room in the house, touched the backs of chairs, opened closets. I realized that all the things I had bought, all the upgrades and renovations, felt like props on a stage after the audience had left. My sons came home for a while. They were kind. They handled paperwork. They hugged me awkwardly, like men who loved their father but didn't quite know him. We tried to talk about memories. They had so many that didn't include me. I started calling them more often. Sometimes they answered, sometimes they didn't. They had their own lives, jobs, children, responsibilities. I can't blame them. The hardest part isn't that I failed. It's that I succeeded at the wrong things. I built a reputation. I built wealth. I built a version of myself that impressed strangers. But I postponed joy. I postponed presence. I kept thinking happiness was waiting at the next milestone, the next promotion, the next deal. There's a phrase I used to say, once things settle down. I said it for 40 years. Things never settled down. They just ended. Now my days are simple. I make my coffee, I read the paper, I sit by the same window where my son once stood waiting for me. Sometimes I imagine what it would have felt like to walk through that door earlier, to kneel down and ask about his day without glancing at my watch. You can't go back and sit on the porch again with a woman who's been gone for 6 years. You can't attend a school play that ended decades ago. You can't tell your younger self that the meeting could have waited. Time doesn't argue, it just moves. I don't live in constant regret. That would be exhausting. There were good moments, vacations, holidays, laughter at the dinner table. I'm grateful for those, truly. But gratitude and sorrow can live in the same house. If I could explain the feeling, it's this. I mistook applause for love. I mistook busyness for purpose. I mistook providing for being present. And I didn't realize the difference until the quiet arrived. When you're young, you think you're choosing between options. Career or family, work or rest. What you're really choosing is how your days will feel when you're 82 and the phone barely rings. I don't need more money now. I need conversations I never had. I need evenings I traded away. I sometimes sit with old photo albums. There's Anna on the porch, smiling at the camera. There are my boys with missing teeth and scraped knees, and there I am too in some of them, usually standing slightly apart, already half turned towards something else. I used to think success would quiet the restless part of me. Instead, it fed it. If this sounds familiar to you, I'm not here to scold you. I don't have the energy for that. I just know how it feels to reach the end of a long road and realize you hurried past the scenery. You tell yourself you're doing it for them. Maybe you are. Just make sure they can feel you there. I would give back a few titles for one more ordinary Tuesday night. I would trade a bonus check for a single porch conversation at dusk. But that's not how it works. So I sit here at 82, in a house that once felt like proof that I mattered, and I try to hold both truths. I worked hard. I loved my family in the way I knew how. And I misunderstood what would actually fill my life. The sun comes up, the house stays quiet. If this meant something to you, I'm glad. That's enough for me now.